So my name is Mwihaki Muraguri. I call myself an Afro-optimist, a learner, and a storysmith. And that's because I call myself a storysmith because I feel like my work is to put together narrative, to panel beat it a bit, to curate it, and then also to distribute it. So I came by this path in probably an unlikely way, but never give a storyteller the mic, so I won't go with the long version. But just to say that my second chapter, which is storytelling, was preceded by about 20 years working in development practice. So I think that I'm marrying my old life of seeing, the things that I used to do in service delivery and funding, and really trying to humanize the work that I see unfolding in this part of the world, in Africa, and to do it in, using story as a compelling way to connect with the way that people's lives are changing through the ways that development works.
I guess I'll take over then. My name is Mark Lovett, and my background, a couple of decades also, but this time it was in the commercial world. I was in the high-tech computer arena. Wore a number of hats from COO to CIO to CMO and CEO, so did a lot of corporate storytelling. And then got out of that racket and started organizing TEDx events. So over a 6-year period, my team and I produced 20 different events, large ones inside of our Symphony Hall in San Diego, California. And then smaller events that were more specialized, like on the US-Mexico border and inside prison and at a local high school. So that's really where the impact side of storytelling came in, to put speakers up on stage that had stories to tell that the audience could really relate to.
That's great, thank you both. And I would love for us to go into a little bit about what you each see as key elements of storytelling for social impact. I know with Mwihaki, we were both fellows at in a media fellowship at Opportunity Collaboration, and I know we worked one-on-one with social entrepreneurs as they had questions, and I heard her coach some of the entrepreneurs. I know that she'll have a perspective, and with Mark, you work with so many speakers to probably help them craft their story into something that could be a compelling TEDx talk. So I think that both of you would have a great insight on this. And Mark, you're on my screen, so feel free to start first if you like.
Okay. So coaching speakers, which is what I do professionally now and what I did during my time at TEDx, is really a process of trying to understand the message that somebody really wants to deliver. And oftentimes the message that people think they want to deliver becomes a little bit different message once we go through a process of ideation, of really digging into what is that message, and then understanding what was the speaker's journey to that message. Why are they passionate about this particular topic? And that question alone usually brings up a very long discussion of how somebody arrived at the point that they're at now. They may want to get up on stage and tell a story, or they may want to start a company that's going to be very impactful. But there's this entire backstory to what brought them to that point and where they got their passion. And then the other side of that equation is, why would an audience care? Or in the case of a company, why would a consumer care? Why would another company care? Whoever your clients are. And so that's another long discussion about why someone would be interested in that product or that idea or that concept. And that forces somebody to put themselves in the shoes of somebody else, either an audience or a customer, and say, well, how would their life be different? How would their perspective on the world be different if they could understand what I understand, if they could come to know what I know? And so that to me is the main place that I start with, is understanding the message, understanding the intent, and then digging into their passion and the passion on the other side of the fence.
I couldn't agree more with what Mark has shared. And I just want to start off by saying, for me, what needs to be at the center is authenticity. I think that what we see a lot of these days is there's so much information, there's so much that's out there, you know, even now with, you know, messaging, someone's always trying to sell you. And I think as humans, we get tired of that, and we can sense it and we can pick it up very easily. And so for me, I always try and encourage people who I'm working with to make sure that they're speaking truth. And they are the experts in the story of their truth. And so no one can challenge them on that. And when it comes to impact, very much whether you're talking about yourself as a beneficiary of, you know, how something has changed your life, or the processes or the steps that you took to make sure that the work that you were investing in landed in the way that it needed to, with the different populations that you're working with. I think bringing in that that truth as part of it at the center of whatever story you are sharing is really important, because that's what people will connect to. Whether that truth was difficult and it was a process where you had to overcome something, whether that truth was surprise because some of the challenges that you found along the way that you didn't necessarily know, or whether it was just as simple as joy. So for me, the most central element is really that authenticity.
Thank you. That's great. Those are two really great elements. And so the next question is like looking at, because you work so, each of you work so closely with individuals that are trying to tell their story and maybe trying to combine elements of their business model and social impact and their own personal story. What are some common mistakes or missed opportunities that you see maybe as a trend or more commonly? And Mwihaki, you're on my screen now, so you're welcome to start.
I think one of the mistakes that people make is trying to navigate what they think their potential funder or the person in the room wants to hear, right? I spent many years as a funder as well, and it would get really frustrating when, you know, somebody is so focused on trying to tell you what they think you want to know as opposed to what they bring to the table. And I think that that's something that it's hard to get past when you're in a space where you're trying to sell your idea, where you're trying to share the enthusiasm of the work that you're working on. But I think that would be a great mistake and a missed opportunity. People are smart. Bring them something new, bring them something unexpected. Work from, like I say, your expertise, knowing that the things that you have gone through are very different from what they have gone through. And that's maybe where you might find your connection.
Yeah, so for me, if I combine those elements of both passion and the authenticity that was just talked about, you do need to come from a place that is real to you and not try to pander to who it is you're speaking to. And a lot of times that can best be expressed with your own personal story. And that's a missed opportunity that I find for a lot of speakers, is that they don't want to dig into their own story. They want to only talk about other people, or they want to talk about, you know, the world at large or the problem that they're trying to address. And if they can dig into what it is that brought them to wanting to connect and wanting them to have impact, that's the best way, I think, to connect with employees, with funders, whether you're in an NGO or a commercial environment. That ability to expose a bit of who you are. And sometimes that can be very vulnerable. Sometimes when I get people to talk about themselves, then they only want to talk about the good things. And sometimes those lessons learned come from the mistakes that were made. That realization that something you thought wasn't quite right, or something that you tried didn't work out the way that you wanted it to. But then if you really have perseverance, then you take a step back, you figure out what went wrong, and you come up with a new plan, and that's how you move forward. And so people that you're telling your story to want to see that you're human, that you have both successes and failures, but that if you're really focused on accomplishing a goal, if you're really passionate about a certain topic, you're not going to stop. You're going to keep coming back at it.
That's great. This is so helpful, and I think these things are so second nature to both of you. But when you're working in a fast-paced environment, as these folks that are joining Impactathon will be, some of these words may help kind of, you know, just focus their attention as well. I just want to ask one final question, and that is kind of storytelling beyond a pitch, or impact storytelling beyond a pitch. So in this event for Impactathon, you know, participants have 24 hours. They'll be working on a pitch of a potential solution to poverty. But, you know, you both work on kind of the longer form storytelling that goes deeper and further than a particular event or instance. So is there any kind of words of wisdom that you can offer of how they can continue continue exploring their impact storytelling skills beyond this, you know, quick pitch that may just be a few minutes, but you know, that they can kind of continue on that path? And Mark, you're on my screen, so feel free to start first on.
Sometimes clients I work with, they want to tell multiple stories of different length. It could be a 60-minute keynote, or a 30-minute business meeting, or a 15-minute TED style talk, or even a 5-minute or less pitch type, you know, talk. So I encourage people to express as much of themselves as they can. Don't worry about how long it's going to take. Don't worry about any sort of time limit. Just to get it down on paper, to capture everything that they're really feeling and thinking. And then from that point, then try to understand, okay, how can I cut this back? How can I turn an hour's worth of material into a 2-minute pitch? And it's very difficult to do. But when you kind of force yourself to do that, you can really see where the story elements are and the most important pieces that you want to share with somebody. So to kind of turn this around, you know, how do you go from a short pitch to a long pitch? If you have documented as much as you can about who you are and what it is you're trying to do, then it's much easier to say, hey, I can add in these other elements. Or instead of speaking of something for, you know, 30, 40 seconds, now I can spend a few minutes to talk about it.
So it turns out that Mark is my twin. Because he said exactly what I would want to say, and that is really around the documentation. I think as humans, what we tend to do is that we forget the trials, and we tend to remember the triumphs of our journeys. And so I have found that even in my own journey as an entrepreneur and as a storyteller building a business, I journal a lot, and I, you know, write down both the trials and the triumphs of my own journey. And when I look back on it, I realize that there's some things that I really minimized along the way because either it was too tough of a time, I really just want to park it, or I haven't realized just how steep the learning curve has been. And it's in those notations is when I find really what the journey has truly been like. And so as your participants move forward, what I really want to encourage them for their own long-term impact storytelling is to document their journeys, because that is where those little sort of nuggets of wisdom and moments where you really want to talk about what the difference was between before and after. That is where you're going to be able to find that material. And then I think one thing that I always wonder about when I watch pitches, either, you know, at the end of a boot camp or a hackathon, is I always want to ask people the question, what is it that scares you in case this doesn't come to pass? Because I think that a lot of us are in the space of solution making, and hearing from people what would happen if, you know, the thing that they're working on or the product that they're developing doesn't come to pass. I think that hearing about that opportunity cost is really something that I would encourage them to keep in their pitch.
That's great. Well, thank you both so much. These are incredibly valuable pearls of wisdom, and I hope they can kind of guide the participants and in their journeys in storytelling. So thank you both so much, and I hope to see you at Impactathon coming up.
It's a pleasure to be here.
You're most welcome. Thank you, Nital, and nice to meet you, Mark.